My stepmom blamed me for hurting her daughter. She didn't know I was her new boss. The resume sitting on my desk had to be some kind of cosmic joke. Madison Chen stared back at me in pristine 12-point Times New Roman, complete with a local address I recognized, the same McMansion where I'd spent 3 miserable years of high school being told I was the problem. The same house where my stepmother Carol would lecture me about being jealous of her perfect daughter while Madison smirked from the doorway. I leaned back in my leather chair, overlooking downtown Portland through floor-to-ceiling windows of our new branch office. At 28, I was the youngest regional marketing director in Thompson & Associates history. I'd clawed my way here through 12-hour days, weekend projects, and sheer determination to prove everyone wrong. Especially the people who'd written me off as a troublemaker at 17. Madison Chen. Even seeing her name made my jaw clench. The irony was suffocating. She was applying for a junior marketing coordinator position, reporting directly to me. The golden child who could do no wrong was asking me for a job, and she had no idea who I was. She'd kept Dad's last name, Chen, while I'd legally changed mine to Mom's maiden name, Sullivan, the day I turned 18. A clean break from a family that never wanted me anyway. My assistant knocked and peeked in. Your 2 p.m. interview is here. Madison Chen. Send her in, I said, closing the resume and straightening my navy blazer. My heart hammered against my ribs. The door opened, and there she was. Still petite at what looked like 25, still with that same glossy black hair, now styled in a professional bob. She wore a gray pantsuit that probably cost more than most people's rent. Some things never changed. Her confident smile faltered for just a microsecond when our eyes met, but she recovered quickly. Hi, I'm Madison Chen. Thank you so much for meeting with me today, Ms. Sullivan, I said, standing and extending my hand. Alex Sullivan. Please, have a seat. No recognition flickered in her dark eyes. Why would it? I'd been the forgettable stepkid who stayed out of her way, the one blamed for every argument, every broken dish, every raised voice in that house. I was background noise to her starring role. I have to say, I'm very excited about this opportunity, Madison continued, settling into the chair across from my desk. Thompson & Associates has such an incredible reputation, and when I heard you were opening a Portland branch. She gestured around the sleek office space. This is exactly the kind of innovative environment I want to be part of. I nodded, scanning her resume again. Bachelor's degree from a decent state school, not the Ivy League Carol used to insist Madison was destined for. A series of short-term marketing jobs at small firms, nothing impressive. Definitely not the trajectory of the brilliant daughter who was supposedly going to run her own company by 30. Tell me about your experience with campaign analytics, I said, leaning forward slightly. As Madison launched into her prepared answer, stumbling over technical terms I'd mastered years ago, I felt something cold and sharp unfurling in my chest. This was my moment. The universe had handed me the ultimate chance to balance the scales. The question was, what kind of person did I want to be? Madison's answer about campaign analytics was painful to watch. She threw around buzzwords like synergistic engagement and holistic brand positioning, the kind of corporate speak that screamed inexperience. I'd seen 1,000 resumes like this, candidates who thought marketing was just posting pretty pictures on Instagram. Interesting approach, I said when she finished. Can you walk me through a specific campaign where you increased ROI? Numbers would be helpful. Her smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Well, at my last position with Cascade Creative, I worked on a campaign for a local restaurant chain that saw significant growth. How significant? We increased their social media engagement by 30% over 6 months. I bit back a laugh. 30% social media engagement for a restaurant chain was nothing. Last month, I'd overseen a campaign that drove 340% revenue growth for a tech startup. But I kept my expression neutral, professional. And what was your role specifically in that campaign? I was part of the creative team that developed the messaging strategy. Part of the team. Translation, she'd probably been the junior associate who formatted PowerPoint slides. My phone buzzed with a text message. Without thinking, I glanced down and my blood ran cold. Dad flashed on the screen. Madison has a big interview today at some marketing firm downtown. Fingers crossed. Carol is so nervous she's been cleaning the house all morning, lol. Of course. Of course Dad was still in my contacts after all these years of silence. I'd never had the heart to delete his number completely, even though he'd chosen Carol and Madison over his own child years ago. Madison was still talking, something about brand awareness and target demographics, but her voice sounded underwater. The familiar knot of abandonment twisted in my stomach. Even now, Dad was prouder of Madison's mediocre job interview than he'd ever been of my actual accomplishments. I'd never even told him about the promotion to regional director. Why would I? He'd made it clear whose success mattered in that family. Ms. Sullivan. Did you want me to elaborate on the demographic targeting? I looked up, refocusing on Madison's expectant face. She had no idea that the man texting me about her interview had once been my father. No idea that her mother had systematically poisoned him against me until cutting contact felt like the only way to preserve what was left of my sanity. Actually, let's talk about your long-term goals, I said, setting my phone face down on the desk. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Madison's eyes lit up. This was clearly a question she'd rehearsed. I want to be running my own campaigns, maybe leading a team. I've always been told I have natural leadership abilities. Natural leadership abilities. The same girl who convinced my father I was stealing her jewelry when her necklace fell behind her dresser. Who'd perfected the art of tears whenever she wanted me blamed for something. Who'd stood by silently while Carol screamed at me for disrupting the family dynamic just by existing. Leadership is certainly important in this field, I agreed. Tell me about a time you had to handle conflict in the workplace. Oh, I try to avoid conflict whenever possible. I believe in maintaining harmony and positive energy. The irony was so thick I could choke on it. Madison Chen, preaching about harmony while sitting across from the stepsister whose teenage years she'd helped turn into a war zone. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Dad, really hoping this works out for her. The job market is so tough for young people these days. The job market is tough for young people. I'd been 25 when I landed my first major client, the same age Madison was now, and Dad couldn't have cared less. Now I had to decide, was I going to be the bigger person, or was I going to give in to the part of me that had been waiting 8 years for this exact moment? The interview continued for another 20 minutes, each question revealing more of Madison's mediocrity. When I asked about her experience with data analysis, she mentioned working with spreadsheets. When I pressed for specifics about marketing automation platforms, she admitted she was still learning most of them. This was the golden child who was supposed to outshine everyone. Well, Madison, I think I have everything I need, I said finally, standing up. We're interviewing several candidates this week. You should hear back from us by Friday. Her confident mask slipped just slightly. Oh. I was hoping. I mean, is there anything specific I should know about the timeline? I have another opportunity that's moving quickly. Another opportunity. Right. If that were true, she wouldn't be sitting here begging for a coordinator position that paid half what I made in bonuses alone. We'll be in touch, I said, walking her to the door. Thank you for coming in. After she left, I sat in my office staring at her resume for a solid 10 minutes. My phone kept buzzing with updates from Dad. Interview done. Madison said it went really well. The interviewer seemed impressed. Carol made her favorite dinner to celebrate. Madison thinks she has a good shot. Impressed. I almost laughed out loud. Madison had bombed that interview so thoroughly that under normal circumstances, her resume would be in the reject pile before she reached the parking garage. But these weren't normal circumstances. My assistant knocked again. Alex? The other candidates for the coordinator position are here for their interviews. Right. I had 3 more interviews scheduled: Sarah Kim, a recent graduate with stellar recommendations, Marcus Williams, who had 2 years of solid experience at a mid-size agency, and Jennifer Torres, whose portfolio included campaigns I'd actually heard of. Any one of them would be better qualified than Madison. Sarah's GPA was 3.8, and her senior project had won a national student marketing competition. Marcus had quantifiable results. He'd managed a campaign that increased client revenue by 180%. Jennifer had worked with brands I respected, creating content that actually moved the needle. I interviewed all 3 that afternoon, and each one reinforced how unprepared Madison was for this role. Sarah spoke fluently about marketing attribution models. Marcus had ideas for improving our client acquisition strategy. Jennifer showed me portfolio pieces that demonstrated real strategic thinking. By 6 p.m., the choice should have been obvious. But I found myself staring at 4 resumes spread across my desk, Madison sitting right on top. My phone rang. Dad's name flashed on the screen. I stared at it for 4 rings before finally answering. Hello. Alex? Oh my God, honey, I can't believe it's really you. Your number came up when I went to text Carol about dinner and, wow. How long has it been? 8 years, 2 months, and 16 days. Not that I was counting. It's been a while, I said carefully. You sound so professional. Very grown up. He laughed nervously. Listen, I know this is completely random, but Madison had this job interview today at Thompson & Associates, and I remembered you were in marketing. You probably don't know anything about it, but they're opening some new Portland office. My throat went dry. Dad. I just thought maybe you'd heard of them. Carol's been worried sick that Madison won't find anything good. The economy, you know. And she's such a bright kid, but sometimes these companies don't recognize talent when they see it. Talent. Madison had shown about as much marketing talent as a houseplant. Thompson & Associates is a good company, I managed. Really? Oh, that's wonderful to hear. Madison will be so relieved. Between you and me, I think she really needs this win. She's been struggling a bit since graduation. Struggling. While I'd been building my career from nothing, working 60-hour weeks and sleeping on friends' couches to afford rent in expensive cities, Madison had been struggling in her childhood bedroom with parents paying her bills. I should go, Dad. Work calls. Of course. But Alex, it's really good to hear your voice. Maybe we could. I hung up before he could finish. The 4 resumes stared back at me. One decision would change everything. I spent the next hour drafting the rejection email to Madison 3 different times. Asterisk, dear Ms. Chen, thank you for your interest in Thompson & Associates. While your background is impressive, we have decided to move forward with other candidates whose experience more closely aligns with our current needs. Asterisk. Professional. Clean. Final. But every time I reached for the send button, Dad's voice echoed in my head, she really needs this win. The same man who'd never once asked if I needed anything after I left home at 17 was worried about Madison's feelings. My office phone rang, jarring me from my spiral. Alex, your 7 p.m. is here, my assistant said. My what? Dinner with the Morrison Group. The client meeting you scheduled for tonight? Shit. The Morrison Group was our biggest potential client, a tech company looking to rebrand their entire product line. I'd been courting them for months, and tonight's dinner was supposed to seal the deal. I couldn't afford to be distracted. Send them to conference room A. I'll be right there. I shoved Madison's resume into my desk drawer and grabbed my portfolio. Focus, Alex. You didn't claw your way to regional director to blow it over some twisted family drama. The Morrison meeting went better than expected. By 9:30 p.m., I had a verbal commitment for a 6-figure contract and a handshake agreement to start next month. Walking back to my office, I should have been celebrating. Instead, I felt hollow. My phone showed 7 missed calls from Carol. Carol. Madison's mother. My former stepmother. The woman who convinced my father that every problem in our household could be traced back to me. Against my better judgment, I played the voicemails. Alex Sullivan, this is Carol Chen. I got your number from your father. We need to talk about Madison's interview today. The second message was sharper. I know what you're trying to do. Madison came home upset, saying the interviewer seemed cold and uninterested. If you think you can sabotage your career because of some childhood grudge. The third message made my blood freeze. Don't think I don't remember you. Richard told me you work in marketing. How convenient that Thompson and Associates is interviewing Madison the same week you happen to call your father. If you cost my daughter this job, I will make sure everyone in Portland's business community knows exactly what kind of person you really are. She knew. Somehow, Carol had connected the dots. I sank into my chair, hands shaking slightly. The last 4 messages were variations of the same theme, threats wrapped in maternal concern, accusations disguised as protection of Madison's interests. Classic Carol. But the final message was different. Carol's voice was calmer, more calculated. I've done some research on Thompson and Associates. Very impressive company. I'm sure they value integrity and ethical behavior in their leadership team. It would be such a shame if they learned their new regional director was using her position to settle personal vendettas. I dropped the phone like it had burned me. Carol was threatening my job. My career. Everything I'd worked for over the past decade could be destroyed by her accusations, even if they weren't entirely true. Corporate America didn't look kindly on executives who mixed personal drama with professional decisions, regardless of the circumstances. My computer pinged with a new email. The subject line made my stomach drop, professional reference request, Madison Chin. The sender was David Morrison, CEO of the Morrison Group. The client I just signed. Asterisk Alex, hope you don't mind me reaching out directly. My wife Carol mentioned that one of her daughters interviewed with your company today. Small world. Carol spoke very highly of your professionalism during tonight's dinner discussion. Looking forward to our partnership. Best regards, David, asterisk. The room started spinning. David Morrison was married to Carol. My biggest client was Madison's stepfather, which meant he was technically my former stepfather too, though we'd never met. Carol had been at dinner tonight, somewhere in that restaurant, while I was shaking hands with her husband and celebrating my biggest career win. She'd played this perfectly. The next morning, I arrived at the office at 6:30 a.m., hoping to clear my head before the workday started. Instead, I found my assistant Emma waiting by my door with a stack of pink message slips and a concerned expression. These came in over the weekend, she said, handing me the messages. And someone's been calling since 7 a.m. asking about the coordinator position timeline. I flipped through the slips. 3 were from Carol, 2 from Madison, and 1 from someone named Richard Chin, Dad, using his formal name. All asking about interview follow-up and next steps in the hiring process. The person calling this morning? I asked, though I already knew. Madison Chin. She seemed persistent. Asked if she could speak directly with the hiring manager about her application status. Of course she did. The golden child wasn't used to waiting for anything, especially not hearing no for an answer. My computer chimed with a calendar reminder, Morrison Group contract review, 9 a.m. In 2.5 hours, I'd be sitting across from David Morrison, going over the details of our partnership while pretending I had no idea his stepdaughter was probably having a breakdown in her childhood bedroom about a job rejection. Except I hadn't rejected her yet. The offer letters for all 4 coordinator candidates were still sitting in my drafts folder, unsent. I pulled up Madison's resume again, studying it with fresh eyes. The employment gaps were more obvious now, 6 months between her second and third jobs, 4 months after her most recent position ended. Her references were sparse, 1 former supervisor, 1 college professor, and someone listed as a family friend. Professional references usually meant you'd made an impression on clients or colleagues. Madison's network was thin enough to see through. At 8:45 a.m., I made my decision. I hit send on 3 offer letters, Sarah Kim, Marcus Williams, and Jennifer Torres. All 3 were overqualified for the coordinator position, but they'd bring real value to the team. Madison's rejection letter could wait until after my meeting with Morrison. The Morrison Group offices occupied 2 floors of a glass tower downtown. David Morrison met me in their lobby, a tall man in his early 50s with graying temples and an expensive suit. He looked nothing like Dad, but something about his confident handshake reminded me uncomfortably of Carol's second husband. Alex. Great to see you again. Ready to make some magic happen? We spent the first hour reviewing campaign timelines and budget allocations. Morrison was sharp, asking detailed questions about our media strategy and conversion tracking methods. I found myself genuinely impressed by his marketing knowledge. Carol had definitely traded up from Dad, who could barely operate his smartphone. I have to ask, Morrison said as we wrapped up the contract details, my wife mentioned you might know our daughter Madison. She interviewed with Thompson last week. My coffee suddenly tasted like ash. Oh. Small world, right? Carol said Madison was very impressed with the interview process. Very thorough, professional questions. He leaned back in his chair. Between you and me, Madison's been having a tough time finding the right fit. Smart kid, but maybe not the most aggressive networker. Carol worries she's too nice for the corporate world. Too nice. Madison Chen, who'd convinced an entire household that I was a kleptomaniac because she was too lazy to keep track of her jewelry. The coordinator position is very competitive, I said carefully. We had several strong candidates. Of course, of course. I wouldn't dream of asking for special treatment. Morrison's smile was warm, genuine. Carol just mentioned that Madison felt a real connection with the interviewer. Said she seemed like someone who understood ambition, you know. Another woman who'd had to work hard to get where she is. The irony was suffocating. Madison had felt a connection with me, the stepsister she'd tortured for 3 years, while having no idea who I was. Morrison's phone buzzed. He glanced down and chuckled. Speak of the devil. Carol wants to know if I've heard anything about the position timeline. He looked up at me. Any chance you could give me a rough idea? Just so I can get her off my back. You know how mothers are. I knew exactly how Carol was. Manipulative, controlling, and absolutely ruthless when it came to getting what she wanted from Madison. Decisions should be finalized by Wednesday, I heard myself saying. Morrison beamed. Perfect. I'll let them know. As I walked back to my office, my phone rang. Emma's number. Alex, we have a problem. Madison Chen is here. In the lobby. She says she won't leave until she speaks with you about her application. I closed my eyes and counted to 10, standing on the sidewalk outside Morrison's building while downtown Portland buzzed around me. Is she alone? No, there's an older woman with her. Asian, maybe mid-50s. They're both in the lobby chairs, and the woman keeps checking her watch. Carol. Of course Carol was here. She'd probably driven Madison downtown the moment I didn't immediately return their calls. I'll be there in 15 minutes. Do not let them up to the office level. Already handled. Security has them at the visitor desk. The drive back to Thompson and Associates felt like a funeral march. Through downtown traffic, I had plenty of time to imagine Carol's calculated performance in my lobby. She'd be playing the concerned mother, probably mentioning to anyone within earshot how unprofessional it was for companies to leave candidates hanging. Classic Carol theater. I parked in the garage and took the back elevator to my floor, hoping to avoid the lobby entirely. My plan was to call down to security and have them escorted out. Clean, professional, final. Instead, I found Carol standing outside my office door. Hello, Alex. She looked exactly the same. Petite, immaculately dressed in a cream blazer and pearls, with that same sharp smile that had convinced Dad I was the problem child. Her black hair was shorter now, styled in an expensive bob that probably cost more than my monthly car payment. Miss Chen. I kept my voice level, professional. I'm afraid you can't be up here without an escort. Your assistant was kind enough to show me the way when I mentioned I was David Morrison's wife. Carol's smile widened. Such a lovely girl. We had a wonderful chat about the coordinator position. Shit. Emma didn't know about my connection to the Morrison family. To her, Carol was just the wife of our biggest client, asking innocent questions about our hiring timeline. I need to ask you to return to the lobby. Of course. But first, I wanted to thank you personally. Carol stepped closer, lowering her voice. David told me you confirmed decisions would be made by Wednesday. Madison will be so relieved. The way she said will be instead of would be made my skin crawl. Carol wasn't here to ask for favors. She was here to collect what she already considered hers. All candidates will be notified by Wednesday, I corrected. Naturally. Carol glanced around my office, taking in the floor-to-ceiling windows, the modern furniture, the awards lining my bookshelf. You've done very well for yourself, Alex. Your father would be proud. My father. Who hadn't spoken to me in 8 years but had texted Carol's husband about Madison's interview. Is there something specific you need, Ms. Chen? Just peace of mind. You understand how protective mothers can be. She paused, studying my face. Although I suppose you wouldn't know, would you? Not having children of your own. The casual cruelty was so perfectly Carol. One sentence that managed to be both condescending and deeply personal. I have a meeting in 10 minutes. Of course you do. Busy, important executive. Carol pulled out her phone and showed me the screen. It was David Morrison's contact information. David speaks so highly of you. He's really excited about your partnership. Said this contract could be the foundation for something much bigger. The threat was crystal clear. Disappoint Madison, and Carol would poison my relationship with Morrison Group. I should mention, Carol continued, David and I are hosting a dinner party next weekend. Several Portland business leaders, potential clients for Thompson and Associates. You should join us. Bring a guest, if you have one. She knew I didn't. Carol had always been a master at identifying people's soft spots. My office phone rang, saving me from having to respond. Emma's voice came through the speaker. Alex, your 11:30 is here early. Send them to conference room B. I'll be right there. Carol nodded approvingly. Don't let me keep you from your important work. I'll give Madison the good news. What good news? That you're a professional who makes decisions based on merit, not personal history. Carol's smile turned razor sharp. That's what I'm going to tell her, anyway. She walked toward the elevator, her heels clicking against the polished floor. At the last second, she turned back. Oh, and Alex. Madison really has grown into a wonderful young woman. Despite everything. Despite everything. Like I had been the problem. Like I had been the one making everyone's life difficult. The elevator doors closed, and I stood alone in the hallway, shaking. I sat in my office for 20 minutes after Carol left, staring at my computer screen without seeing anything. The offer letters I'd sent to Sarah, Marcus, and Jennifer felt like they were burning a hole in my email outbox. Madison's rejection letter remained unwritten. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Hi Alex. This is Madison. Got your number from my stepmom. Thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me yesterday. Really hoping to hear good news soon. Smiling face with smiling eyes. My stepmom. Not my mom or even Carol. Madison was positioning herself as the innocent party in whatever family drama Carol had acknowledged. Smart. Emma knocked and peered around my door. Your 11:30 went well. Mr. Patterson wants to move forward with the Q1 campaign. She hesitated. Also, I should probably mention, Mrs. Morrison asked a lot of questions about you when I walked her upstairs. Personal stuff. What kind of personal stuff? How long you been with Thompson, whether you were from Portland originally, if you were married. Emma looked uncomfortable. I kept it professional, but she was very persistent. Said she was hoping to invite you to some dinner party. Of course Carol had been fishing for information. She was probably building a complete picture of my life to figure out the best pressure points. My computer chimed with another email from David Morrison. Alex, quick follow-up on our conversation this morning. Carol mentioned she stopped by your office to thank you personally for the thorough interview process. She was very impressed with your professionalism. Looking forward to finalizing everything this week. David. The subtext was clear. Carol had reported back to her husband about our encounter, and now Morrison was expecting good news about Madison's application. I pulled up Madison's resume one more time, forcing myself to evaluate it objectively. Bachelor's degree from Portland State, decent but not exceptional. 3 marketing jobs in 4 years, with gaps that suggested she'd either been fired or quit without notice. Her longest tenure anywhere was 18 months. No major clients, no standout achievements, no evidence of strategic thinking. Compare that to Sarah Kim, who'd graduated summa cum laude and already had experience with marketing automation platforms that took most people years to master. Or Marcus Williams, who'd increased client retention by 45% at his previous agency. Or Jennifer Torres, whose campaign for a nonprofit had won a regional advertising award. There was no contest. Madison didn't deserve this job. But at 3:47 p.m., my resolve cracked when my phone rang with Dad's number. Alex, honey, I have some exciting news. Carol told me about your meeting today. She said you were incredibly professional, very impressive. David Morrison thinks the world of you. Dad. I had no idea you'd become so successful. Regional director. That's amazing. Carol said your office has this incredible view of downtown Portland. His voice carried a warmth I hadn't heard in 8 years. I'm proud of you, sweetheart. I should have reached out sooner. The words I'd waited nearly a decade to hear. But they came with strings attached, delivered because Carol had deemed me useful to Madison's career prospects. It took Madison's interview for you to remember you had another daughter. Long pause. That's not fair, Alex. You're the one who cut contact. You changed your name, blocked my calls. After 3 years of being told I was the problem with everything. After you chose Carol's version of events over mine every single time. You were 17 and angry. I thought you needed space to cool down. 8 years of space, Dad. I didn't know how to reach out. Carol said maybe it was better to let you start fresh, build your own life without our family drama weighing you down. Carol said. Always Carol, pulling the strings behind every decision that pushed me further away from my father. And now I see what you've accomplished. You've built something incredible for yourself. I want to be part of your life again, Alex. If you'll let me. I closed my eyes. He wanted back in now that I was successful, now that I could benefit his stepdaughter's career. The timing wasn't coincidental. The coordinator position, I said quietly. What about it? Madison isn't qualified, Dad. Not even close. Silence stretched between us. When he spoke again, his voice was careful, measured. Carol thinks Madison would be a good fit for your team. Carol isn't a marketing executive. No, but she knows Madison better than anyone. And you might not remember Madison fairly. You two had some conflicts when you were younger. Some conflicts. That's what he called 3 years of psychological warfare. I remember perfectly. Alex, I'm asking you to be the bigger person here. Madison's struggling. She needs this opportunity. There it was. The real reason for his call, for his sudden interest in reconciliation. Not because he missed me or regretted choosing Carol's family over his own daughter. Because Madison needed something I could provide. What about what I needed when I was 18? When I needed my father to believe me instead of assuming I was lying? That was different. How? You were strong. You always landed on your feet. Madison's more fragile. Fragile. Madison, who'd systematically destroyed my reputation in that house, was fragile. I was strong, so I didn't deserve protection or support or even basic parental loyalty. I hung up without saying goodbye. The deadline came faster than I wanted. Wednesday morning arrived gray and drizzly, typical Portland weather that matched my mood perfectly. I'd spent Tuesday night rewriting Madison's rejection letter 17 times, each draft getting sharper, more personal, before I delete it and start over. By 8 a.m., I had 3 acceptance calls to make and 1 rejection email to send. I started with the good news. Sarah Kim answered on the second ring, her voice bright with nervous energy. When I offered her the position at $52,000 annually with full benefits, she actually squealed. Ms. Sullivan, thank you so much. I won't let you down, I promise. Marcus Williams was more composed but equally thrilled. This is incredible news, Alex. I've been following Thompson and Associates for years. We spent 10 minutes discussing his start date and initial project assignments. Jennifer Torres was in a client meeting, so I left a voicemail with the offer details. That left Madison. At 10:15 a.m., I finally opened her rejection email template. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for 5 full minutes before I started typing. Dear Ms. Chin. Asterisk, thank you for your interest in the marketing coordinator position at Thompson and Associates. After careful consideration of all candidates, we have decided to move forward with applicants whose experience more closely aligns with our current needs. Asterisk. We were impressed by your enthusiasm and wish you the best in your future endeavors. Sincerely. Alexandra Sullivan. Regional Marketing Director. Professional. Clean. Final. My finger was literally on the send button when Emma burst through my door without knocking. Alex, we have a situation. There are reporters in the lobby. Reporters? 2 of them, with cameras. They're asking about Thompson and Associates hiring practices and something about nepotism allegations. Emma looked genuinely panicked. Security called up, apparently someone tipped them off about a corruption scandal involving a regional director and client relationships. My blood turned to ice. Carol. She'd actually done it. She'd called the media. I minimized Madison's email and pulled up the Portland Business Journal's website. The headline made my stomach drop, local marketing firm under investigation for ethical violations. The article was brief but devastating. Asterisk, anonymous sources allege that Thompson and Associates' new Portland branch may be engaging in discriminatory hiring practices, with particular concern about conflicts of interest between executive staff and major clients. The allegations center around Regional Director Alexandra Sullivan and her handling of recent recruitment efforts. Asterisk. Ms. Sullivan. Emma was still standing in my doorway, wringing her hands. What should I tell them? Before I could answer, my phone rang. Corporate headquarters, Chicago. My boss, Patricia Webb, Senior VP of Operations. Alex, what the hell is going on in Portland? Patricia, I can explain. I've got reporters calling our main office asking about corruption investigations. The Morrison Group account is worth $2 million annually to this company. If we lose them because of some personal vendetta. It's not a vendetta. I haven't done anything wrong. Then why are there journalists in your lobby asking about hiring discrimination? I looked at Madison's unsent rejection email on my screen, then at the 3 offer letters I'd already sent to better qualified candidates. Technically, I'd made the right professional decisions. But Carol had twisted the narrative into something ugly. Someone is trying to pressure me into hiring an unqualified candidate because of family connections to a major client, I said carefully. Family connections? Shit. I hadn't told Patricia about my history with the Morrison family. Why would I? It should have been irrelevant to my professional responsibilities. It's complicated, but I've been completely ethical in my hiring decisions. I can document everything. You better hope so. I'm sending internal affairs to Portland tomorrow morning. Until this is resolved, you're suspended from any hiring decisions. And Alex? If this impacts the Morrison contract, you're done. She hung up. The rejection email to Madison stared back at me, still unsent. Emma cleared her throat. The reporters are asking for a statement. Should I tell them no comment? Through my office window, I could see news vans pulling up outside. Carol had escalated this beyond family drama into a full corporate crisis. One phone call from her to the right journalist, probably framed as a concerned citizen reporting ethical violations, and now my entire career was on the line. My computer chimed with a new email. David Morrison, Alex, I'm seeing some concerning news reports. Could we schedule a call to discuss? David. Game over. Carol had won. I stared at Morrison's email for 30 seconds before my phone started buzzing with an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Alexandra Sullivan. Alex, it's David Morrison. I'm calling from my personal line because this situation requires immediate attention. His voice had lost all warmth from yesterday's meeting. This was CEO David Morrison, not Carol's concerned husband. David, I want you to know that every hiring decision I've made has been based solely on candidate qualifications. Stop. The word cut through my explanation like a blade. I need you to listen very carefully. My wife is in my office right now, crying, because she believes you're discriminating against Madison due to some personal grudge. Through my office window, I watched a third news van arrive. Emma was frantically fielding phone calls at her desk. That's absolutely not true. I've documented the entire interview process. Carol says you changed your name to hide your identity. That you've been planning this revenge scenario for years. Morrison's voice dropped lower. She showed me Madison's high school yearbook, Alex. You're Richard Chen's daughter. My throat constricted. Of course Carol had kept my old yearbook photos, probably as insurance for exactly this moment. Yes, Richard is my father. But that has nothing to do with my professional evaluation of Madison's qualifications. Doesn't it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you used your position to humiliate a young woman who probably doesn't even remember whatever teenage drama you're holding on to. The injustice of it made my chest burn. Madison didn't remember. She tortured me for 3 years and moved on without a second thought, while I'd spent nearly a decade building myself into someone worthy of respect. Now I was the villain for not handing her a job she hadn't earned. I interviewed 4 candidates, David. Madison ranked 4th in qualifications. I can send you the detailed evaluation matrices. Carol mentioned that you've already offered positions to the other candidates. Shit. How did she know that? Then I remembered Emma's conversation yesterday, Carol's probing questions about our timeline and process. The most qualified candidates, yes. Before officially rejecting Madison. The trap was elegant in its simplicity. By sending offers to Sarah, Marcus, and Jennifer while leaving Madison's rejection unsent, Carol could argue I was deliberately prolonging her daughter's anxiety. Psychological torture disguised as standard procedure. Our typical process. Alex, I'm going to be very direct. The Morrison Group represents 30% of your projected revenue for next year. We're prepared to expand that partnership significantly if Thompson & Associates proves to be the right cultural fit. Cultural fit. Corporate speak for, do what we want or lose the money. Are you threatening to terminate our contract if I don't hire Madison? Long pause. I'm suggesting that companies who share our values around fairness and second chances tend to build stronger long-term relationships. My computer pinged with an urgent email from Patricia Webb, Media Relations is handling press inquiries. Do not speak to reporters. Internal Affairs team arriving Thursday 9 a.m. Have all hiring documentation ready for review. Through my door, I could hear Emma's increasingly stressed voice. No comment. Yes, Ms. Sullivan is in the building. No, she's not available for interviews. David, I need to ask you directly, did Carol coach you to make this call? Another pause. My wife is concerned about her daughter's welfare. As her husband, I share that concern. That's not what I asked. Alex, you have until end of business today to resolve this situation. After that, I'll need to evaluate whether Thompson & Associates aligns with Morrison Group's ethical standards. The line went dead. I sat in my chair, watching Portland's skyline blur through rain-streaked windows while my career imploded in real time. Emma knocked softly. Alex? Channel 12 is requesting a live interview for the 6 o'clock news. They want to discuss nepotism in Portland's business community. Her voice cracked slightly. Also, Madison Chin called. She sounded upset. Asked if the news reports were about her interview. Madison didn't even know. Carol had orchestrated this entire media circus without telling her daughter she was destroying someone's life to secure her a job. My phone buzzed with a text from Dad, saw the news. What have you done? What have I done? Not, are you okay, or, how can I help? Just immediate assumption that I was the problem, exactly like old times. The rejection email still waited on my screen, cursor blinking in the signature line like a countdown timer. One click would end this nightmare, and probably my career. But giving in meant Carol won everything. I opened a new email and started typing a different message entirely. The email I typed wasn't to Madison. It was to Patricia Webb, my boss in Chicago. Asterisk Patricia, I need to provide you with complete context before internal affairs arrives. 8 years ago, my father married Carol Morrison, who is now the wife of David Morrison, CEO of Morrison Group. During my teenage years living in their household, there were significant conflicts between Madison Chen, Carol's daughter, and myself that ultimately led me to cut contact with my father's family when I turned 18. I legally changed my name from Chen to Sullivan to make a clean break, asterisk. Madison applied for our coordinator position under her original surname and showed no recognition of who I was during the interview. I evaluated all candidates based solely on professional qualifications. I have detailed notes and scoring matrices for all 4 applicants. Madison ranked 4th due to employment gaps, limited technical skills, and lack of measurable achievements compared to the other candidates, asterisk. I believe Carol Morrison discovered my identity through her husband and is now orchestrating this media campaign to pressure me into hiring her daughter. At no point have I acted unprofessionally or allowed personal history to influence my hiring decisions. I'm prepared to submit to any investigation and provide complete documentation, asterisk. The Morrison Group contract is valuable, but not worth compromising Thompson and Associates' integrity or employment standards. Respectfully, Alexandra Sullivan. I sent it before I could second-guess myself, then immediately started gathering every piece of documentation from the hiring process. Interview notes, resume evaluations, reference checks, timeline records, everything that proved my decisions had been methodical and merit-based. My phone rang again. This time it was Marcus Williams, one of the candidates I'd offered positions to. Alex, I just saw Channel 8's website. There's an article about Thompson and Associates and something about hiring controversies. His voice was cautious, worried. Should I be concerned about the position you offered me? Shit. The media attention was already affecting my new hires. If Sarah, Marcus, and Jennifer started questioning the legitimacy of their offers, Carol's sabotage would be complete. Marcus, your offer stands exactly as discussed. You earned that position through your qualifications and experience, period. The media reports are related to accusations made by someone whose candidate wasn't selected. Okay, that's good to hear. It's just, my current employer saw the news and made some comments about me joining a controversial company. I understand your concern. Would it help if I provided a written statement confirming your hire was based entirely on merit? Actually, yes. That would be great. Thanks, Alex. After hanging up, I drafted similar emails to Sarah and Jennifer, reassuring them about their positions and providing documentation of their superior qualifications. Whatever else happened, I wouldn't let Carol's manipulation destroy the careers of 3 people who'd done nothing wrong. Emma appeared in my doorway again, her face pale. Alex, there's a woman here claiming to be your stepmother. She says she needs to speak with you about resolving this misunderstanding before it gets worse. Emma lowered her voice. Security wants to know if they should escort her out. Carol. Of course she'd come back to deliver the final ultimatum in person. Tell security to give her 5 minutes in conference room B. I'll meet her there. Are you sure that's wise? With the reporters downstairs. 5 minutes, Emma. And document the time of the meeting. I grabbed my portfolio with all the hiring documentation and walked toward the conference room, my heels clicking against the marble floor like a countdown. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see more news vans arriving. Carol had turned my professional life into a circus, and now she wanted to negotiate terms for making it stop. But this time, I wasn't the powerless 17-year-old she manipulated before. This time, I had documentation, witnesses, and 8 years of experience dealing with corporate bullies who thought they could intimidate me into submission. Carol was waiting in the conference room, perfectly composed despite having just destroyed my reputation on live television. Hello again, Alex. I think it's time we had an honest conversation. I sat across from Carol in conference room B, my hiring documentation spread between us like evidence in a trial. Through the glass walls, I could see Emma fielding another phone call while reporters lingered in our lobby 3 floors below. You look tired, Alex, Carol said, smoothing her cream blazer. This must be so stressful for you. Cut the act, Carol. What do you want? Her concerned mother expression dropped immediately. I want you to do the right thing. Madison deserves this position, and we both know you have the power to make that happen. Madison ranked 4th out of 4 candidates. Sarah Kim has a 3.8 GPA and won a national marketing competition. Marcus Williams increased client retention by 45% at his previous agency. Jennifer Torres. I don't care about their resumes. Carol leaned forward, her voice sharp. Madison is family, Alex. Or have you forgotten what that means? Family. I almost laughed. You spent 3 years convincing my father I was a problem that needed to be solved. You got exactly what you wanted when I left. You were 17 and dramatic. Everything was the end of the world. Carol waved her hand dismissively. Madison barely remembers those silly teenage fights. She's moved on. Maybe you should too. Silly teenage fights. She was rewriting history in real time, transforming years of systematic emotional abuse into normal sibling rivalry. Is that what you told the reporters? That this is about silly fights? Carol's smile turned razor sharp. I told them the truth. That a young woman was discriminated against by someone with a personal grudge. That Thompson and Associates hired a regional director who uses her position to settle old scores. My phone buzzed with a text from Dad, please call me. Carol says you're trying to destroy Madison's career. This has gone too far. I showed Carol the message. Does he know you called the media? Or does he think this is all my fault too? Richard knows I'm protecting our daughter. Just like any mother would. Our daughter. Madison had never been my sister, not really, but Carol's possessive language made it clear I'd never belonged in that family equation at all. Here's what's going to happen, Carol continued. You're going to call Madison this afternoon and offer her the position. Starting salary of $55,000, more than you offer the others, to compensate for this unnecessary stress. You'll issue a public statement saying the hiring process has been completed successfully and all allegations were baseless. And if I refuse? Channel 12 wants to interview Madison tonight about workplace discrimination. She'll be devastated, of course, talking about how she just wanted a chance to prove herself. David is prepared to terminate the Morrison Group contract and recommend that other CEOs in his network avoid Thompson and Associates. The threat was comprehensive. Public humiliation, financial ruin, and professional blacklisting, all wrapped in Madison's innocent tears for the cameras. You're willing to destroy my career for a job Madison doesn't even qualify for. I'm willing to protect my daughter from someone who's held a grudge for 8 years. Carol stood up, smoothing her skirt. You have 2 hours, Alex. The press conference is scheduled for 4 p.m. She walked toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Alex. David mentioned you seem very dedicated to your work. No husband, no children, just this job. It would be such a shame if that's all you had to lose. After Carol left, I sat alone in the conference room, staring at Madison's resume. My phone showed 17 missed calls, 12 voicemails, and 43 unread emails. The story was spreading beyond Portland. I had messages from colleagues in Seattle, San Francisco, even Chicago. At 1:47 p.m., my computer chimed with an email that changed everything. The sender was Jennifer Torres, one of my successful candidates. Asterisk Alex, I hope this message finds you well despite the current media situation. I wanted you to know that I've been contacted by a Portland Business Journal reporter asking about my interview experience with Thompson and Associates. I told them the truth, that your process was thorough, professional, and entirely merit-based. I also mentioned that I've actually worked with Madison Chin before, at Cascade Creative. I thought you should know that she was terminated from that position for falsifying client engagement metrics. I have documentation if needed. Best regards, Jennifer, asterisk. Documentation. Proof that Madison hadn't just been unqualified, she'd been dishonest about her previous work. I finally had ammunition to fight back. I called Jennifer Torres immediately. Jennifer, thank you for reaching out. Can you tell me more about Madison's termination at Cascade Creative? It was about 6 months ago. Madison was on my team for the Bella Vista restaurant campaign, the one she mentioned in interviews where she claimed 30% engagement growth. Jennifer's voice was careful but clear. The actual engagement numbers were maybe 8%, and that was only because we ran the campaign during their grand opening week. Madison had been inflating metrics in her weekly reports for months. Do you have documentation? Email threads, spreadsheet comparisons, the termination paperwork HR copied me on since I was her supervisor. Madison told clients we were seeing 40% conversion rates when the real number was closer to 12%. When the clients started asking for detailed breakdowns, everything fell apart. I felt something cold and sharp settle in my stomach. Would you be willing to provide those documents to my company's internal affairs team? Absolutely. Alex, I need you to know, when I heard Madison was interviewing at Thompson, I almost called to warn you. But I figured her references would reveal the truth. Her references. I pulled up Madison's application again, scanning the reference section. One former supervisor, not from Cascade Creative. One college professor from 3 years ago. One family friend. Jennifer, who was listed as her supervisor reference from Cascade. Probably Derek Walsh, the creative director. He wasn't involved in her day-to-day work, so he might not have known about the falsified reports. Our owner, Mike Chen, made the termination decision directly. Mike Chen. No relation to Madison, just an unfortunate coincidence that made her reference checking more complicated. But now I had a clear picture. Madison had been fired for falsifying data, then carefully crafted her reference list to hide that fact. At 2:15 p.m., my phone rang with Patricia Webb's number. Alex, I just received a very interesting call from someone named Jennifer Torres. She claims she has evidence that the candidate in question was terminated for cause from her previous position. That's correct. I'm gathering the documentation now. Good. Because I also just got off the phone with Morrison Group's board of directors. Apparently, several board members saw the news coverage and demanded an emergency meeting about David Morrison's conflict of interest. Patricia's voice carried a hint of satisfaction. Turns out corporate boards don't like CEOs who use million-dollar contracts to settle family disputes. My heart started beating faster. What does that mean for us? It means Morrison's threats carry a lot less weight when his own board is questioning his judgment. But Alex, we still need to handle this media situation carefully. Internal affairs will review everything, but in the meantime, I need you to prepare a detailed statement about your hiring process. Already done. And Patricia? There's something else you should know about the Morrison family dynamics. I spent 10 minutes explaining the full history, Carol's manipulation tactics, Dad's willingness to prioritize his stepdaughter over his biological child, the systematic way they'd rewritten family narratives to make me the villain. When I finished, Patricia was quiet for a long moment. Alex, this is exactly the kind of personal complexity that should have been disclosed when Morrison Group first became a potential client. She was right, and I felt heat rise in my cheeks. I thought it was irrelevant. I legally changed my name specifically to avoid situations like this. I understand the impulse, but now we're managing a crisis that could have been prevented. However, her voice softened slightly. It sounds like you've handled the actual hiring decisions with complete professionalism. With Jennifer Torres's documentation, we have grounds to defend every choice you made. At 2:47 p.m., Emma knocked on my door with an urgent expression. Alex, Madison Chen is on line 1. She's crying. I stared at my phone for 3 rings before picking up. Alexandra Sullivan. Alex? Is that? God, I can't believe this is real. Madison's voice was thick with tears, nothing like the confident candidate from last week. I just got home from a client meeting and there are news vans outside my house. My neighbors are staring. What is happening? For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a flicker of sympathy. Madison hadn't orchestrated this media circus, Carol had, without even telling her daughter she was burning down someone's life to secure her a job. Madison, The reporters keep asking about discrimination and nepotism. They want to know about our family history and why I think you're targeting me. Her voice cracked. I had to Google your name to figure out what they were talking about. Alex Sullivan. Alexandra Chin. You're Richard's daughter. The recognition had finally clicked. 8 years too late, but it was there. Yes, I am. Oh my God. Oh my god, this is so messed up. I heard her blow her nose. My mom called me 20 minutes ago screaming about how you've been sabotaging me, but I don't understand any of this. I barely remember you from high school. Barely remember me. The girl who convinced our father I was stealing from her didn't even remember destroying my teenage years. Madison, did Carol tell you she contacted the media? What? No, she said someone at your company leaked information about unethical hiring practices. She's been handling everything because I've been too upset to think straight. Madison's breathing was uneven, panicky. Alex, I need you to tell me the truth. Did you reject me because of something that happened when we were kids? I looked at Jennifer Torres's email about Madison's termination, then at the hiring evaluations that clearly showed her ranking 4th out of 4 candidates. The truth was complicated, but the facts were simple. I rejected you because you weren't qualified for the position. Your interview responses showed significant gaps in technical knowledge, your employment history has unexplained breaks, and you provided misleading information about your previous work. Misleading information? What are you talking about? The Bella Vista restaurant campaign. You claimed 30% engagement growth. Your actual supervisor from that project tells me the real number was 8% and that you were terminated for falsifying metrics. Silence. Then, who did you talk to? Jennifer Torres. She's one of the candidates I offered the position to, and she happened to be your supervisor at Cascade Creative. Jennifer Torres is lying. Madison's voice turned sharp, defensive. She was jealous of my client relationships. She never understood my strategic approach. Madison, she has documentation. Email threads, spreadsheets, termination paperwork. Another pause. When Madison spoke again, her tone had shifted from tears to something harder. Even if that's true, even if I made some mistakes at my last job, that doesn't justify this media circus. You could have just sent me a rejection letter. I was planning to. But Carol showed up at my office yesterday making threats, then called reporters when she didn't get what she wanted. My mom was protecting me. She didn't know about whatever happened between us before. She knew exactly what she was doing. She threatened my career, my client relationships, even had your stepfather pressure me using Morrison Group's contract. David wouldn't do that. He doesn't even know about the interview details. I read her Morrison's exact words from my notes. Companies who share our values around fairness and second chances tend to build stronger long-term relationships. That was his way of saying hire you or lose the contract. Madison was quiet for so long I thought the call had dropped. Finally, this is so fucked up. I never asked for any of this. I just wanted a job. Then call Carol off. Tell her to retract the media story and stop threatening my company. I can't control what my mom does. She's been stressed about my career for months, and when she found out about your connection. Madison's voice trailed off. Look, maybe we can figure something out. Some kind of compromise. What kind of compromise? What if I withdrew my application voluntarily? Said I'd found another opportunity. Then everyone saves face and this whole thing goes away. It was a reasonable offer, but something in her tone made me suspicious. And in exchange, maybe you could provide a positive reference for future applications. Just something generic about my interview being professional and thorough. Even now, even caught lying about her previous job and trapped in her mother's manipulation, Madison was still trying to angle for an advantage. Some things never changed. I can't do that, Madison. Not with what I know about Cascade Creative. Her sigh was heavy, defeated. Then I guess we're both screwed. Through my window, I watched another news van pull up. 3:23 p.m. 37 minutes until Carol's press conference. There might be another way, I said slowly. But it means you'd have to stand up to Carol. Stand up to my mom. Madison's voice pitched higher. Alex, you don't understand. She's been planning my career move since I graduated. She has spreadsheets tracking every application I submit, contacts at half the marketing firms in Portland. If I go against her on this, she'll what? Cut you off financially. It's not about money. Madison paused, and I heard voices in the background. Shit, she just pulled into the driveway. She's supposed to be at the press conference location setting up with David. My stomach clenched. Madison, listen to me very carefully. Carol is about to destroy both our careers to win a fight that started 8 years ago. If you don't stop her, I have to go. She's coming inside. The line went dead. 3:31 p.m. 29 minutes until Carol painted me as a vindictive executive who abused her power for personal revenge. My computer chimed with an email from David Morrison. Alex, my board has requested an emergency meeting regarding my handling of this situation. I may not be available for comment during today's press conference. We should discuss this privately before taking further action. David. The cracks in Carol's plan were showing. Morrison's board was questioning his judgment, Madison was realizing she'd been manipulated, and I had documentation proving both my professional integrity and Madison's dishonesty. But Carol was still moving forward with the press conference, probably assuming she could control the narrative once the cameras started rolling. At 3:45 p.m., Emma rushed into my office without knocking. Alex, we have a problem. Channel 12 just called. Madison Chen isn't showing up for the press conference. Carol Morrison is there alone, and she's telling reporters that her daughter is too traumatized by workplace harassment to appear publicly. I pulled up the Channel 12 live stream on my computer. There was Carol, standing outside Thompson and Associates building with 3 microphones pointed at her face. She'd changed into a black dress, grief attire for her daughter's traumatic experience. My daughter Madison is a bright, qualified young woman who simply wanted an opportunity to prove herself, Carol was saying, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Instead, she was subjected to a vindictive hiring process by someone who has harbored resentment for nearly a decade. The reporter leaned forward. Mrs. Morrison, can you elaborate on the personal history between your daughter and Ms. Sullivan? Alexandra was my husband's daughter from his previous marriage. She lived with us briefly during high school, and unfortunately, there were significant behavioral issues. We tried family therapy, counseling, everything we could think of. Carol's voice wavered perfectly. When Alexandra chose to cut contact with her father, we respected that decision. We never imagined she'd use her professional position to retaliate against Madison years later. Behavioral issues. Family therapy. She was painting me as a disturbed teenager who required professional intervention, making my teenage rebellion sound like mental illness. What evidence do you have that Ms. Sullivan's hiring decision was based on personal bias? Carol reached into her purse and pulled out a manila folder. I have documentation showing that less qualified candidates were offered positions while Madison was deliberately strung along. The timeline itself proves malicious intent. Alexandra delayed Madison's rejection until after the media became involved. My blood turned to ice. The delayed rejection email was going to look exactly like Carol described, evidence of psychological torture rather than careful deliberation. At 3:52 p.m., my phone rang. Patricia Webb, calling from Chicago. Alex, are you watching this press conference? Unfortunately, yes. The woman is demolishing you on live television. She's making you sound like a vindictive sociopath who's been planning this revenge for 8 years. Patricia's voice was tight with stress. Our main office is getting calls from potential clients asking if Thompson and Associates employs unstable executives. Through my window, I could see Carol still holding court with the reporters, probably moving on to phase 2 of her character assassination. My career was dying in real time, broadcast live across Portland's business community. Patricia, Jennifer Torres is sending her documentation about Madison's termination. That should help. It won't matter if we lose 3 more clients before internal affairs can review it. Alex, I need you to seriously consider whether a resignation might be the cleanest solution for everyone. Resignation. After 12 years of building my career, Carol was going to force me out with a perfectly orchestrated media manipulation that painted her as the protective mother and me as the unstable aggressor. But at 3:58 p.m., something unexpected happened. Madison Chin appeared on camera. Madison looked terrible. Her hair was disheveled, her eyes red from crying, and she wore jeans and a wrinkled sweater, nothing like the polished professional from last week's interview. She walked straight up to the cluster of microphones where Carol was still performing her grieving mother act. Mom, stop. Just stop talking. Carol's perfectly composed expression cracked for a split second. Madison, honey, you shouldn't be here. You're too upset. I'm upset because you've been lying to everyone, including me. Madison's voice shook, but she faced the cameras directly. My name is Madison Chen, and I want to set the record straight about what actually happened. The reporters immediately focused on her, sensing a shift in the narrative. Carol tried to put a protective arm around Madison's shoulders, but Madison stepped away. Ms. Chen, your mother claims you were discriminated against during the hiring process at Thompson and Associates. Can you elaborate? Madison took a shaky breath. I wasn't discriminated against. I was rejected because I wasn't qualified for the position. She pulled out her phone and started reading from it. I lied on my resume about my previous job. I was fired from Cascade Creative for falsifying client engagement metrics. My supervisor has documentation proving I inflated numbers by over 200% in some cases. Madison, you don't know what you're saying, Carol started, but Madison cut her off. I know exactly what I'm saying, Mom. I also know that you called these reporters without telling me. You threatened MS. Sullivan's career and tried to manipulate her boss using David's business connections. Madison's voice grew stronger. Ms. Sullivan didn't reject me because of some family grudge. She rejected me because Jennifer Torres, who's actually qualified, applied for the same position. One of the reporters leaned forward. Are you saying your mother fabricated this discrimination story? I'm saying my mother has spent 8 years rewriting family history to make herself look better. Madison glanced at Carol, whose face had gone pale. Alex, Ms. Sullivan, wasn't the problem child in our house. She was the scapegoat for everything that went wrong. And I was too young and selfish to see it. Carol grabbed Madison's arm. You're having an emotional breakdown. We need to get you home. Don't. Madison pulled away firmly. I'm 25 years old, and I'm tired of you managing my life like I'm helpless. She looked back at the cameras. Ms. Sullivan made the right professional decision. I didn't deserve that job, and trying to force her to hire me through media manipulation was wrong. What about the family conflicts your mother mentioned? Another reporter asked. Madison was quiet for a moment, and I found myself holding my breath 3 floors above. When Alex lived with us in high school, my mother convinced everyone that Alex was jealous, disruptive, attention-seeking. But looking back, Alex was just a teenager trying to find her place in a family that never really wanted her there. Madison's voice cracked slightly. I barely remember her because I never bothered to get to know her. That's on me, not her. The press conference dissolved after that. Carol tried damage control, insisting Madison was confused and emotional, but the reporters had lost interest in her story. The narrative had flipped completely, from corporate corruption to family manipulation. At 4:23 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Alex, this is Madison. I'm sorry for everything. 8 years too late, but I'm sorry. You deserved better from all of us. I stared at the message for a long time before typing back, thank you. That means more than you know. By Friday morning, the story had been buried beneath Portland's typical news cycle. Patricia Webb called to confirm that internal affairs had reviewed all documentation and found no evidence of improper hiring practices. The Morrison Group contract remained intact. David Morrison quietly recused himself from any discussions involving Thompson and Associates to avoid further conflicts of interest. Sarah Kim, Marcus Williams, and Jennifer Torres all started their positions the following Monday. They're excellent employees who've already contributed to 2 successful campaigns. And me? I kept my job, my integrity, and for the first time in 8 years, something resembling peace with my past. Sometimes the best revenge really is living well, but having the courage to tell the truth runs a close second.